somebody working with him? Was it a conspiracy?
His intention was to bring fame to himself.
Was religion a motive?
He said, "My name's Mark David Chapman. You'll remember my name."
Nobody's ever given peace a complete chance. Gandhi tried it, Martin Luther King tried it, but they were shot.
So we are going from happy holidays to this. That was a clip of the new docuseries John Lennon, Murder Without a Trial. And the series features exclusive eyewitness interviews and previously unseen crime scene photos, shedding new light on the life and murder of an icon. So joining me right now is one of the directors, Nick Holt. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so interested in this because I feel like this was a huge part of so many people's lives. I know it happened more than 40 years ago. So the first question is, why did you feel like it was important to revisit that crime and what happened?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's as you say, it's a long time ago. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm not necessarily young, but I don't remember anything about that murder. I was too young at the time to realize how seismic it was. I've never been a huge Beatles fan, but it was just a chance to go back and explore everything about the death of a global musical icon, an event that sort of changed the world basically. And it was a chance to sort of see that there was a lot of unfinished business. There was a lot of about the trial that never was. There was, Chapman hadn't been fully explored, and probably more than that as well. There were a lot of people directly involved in the case that were sort of getting on a bit now. And if we didn't sort of capture them and gather them into a series, their testimony would be lost forever, really.
Well, I know you just mentioned that you weren't much of a Beatles fan, but in your research, doing this docuseries, can you kind of go over maybe some surprises you had or something you learned about the cultural impact John Lennon had at this time and why this was so shocking, not only then, but I mean, years later? We're still talking about this 40 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Beatles were huge, and all of the members were huge individuals within that group. But John in particular, I completely underestimated what a powerful force he was in his sort of political movement, the anti-war movement, the marches against the war in Vietnam, how outspoken he was, how brave he was. At the time, there were never musicians putting their voice out in that way, speaking to hundreds of thousands, across the country at conventions and gatherings. So I'd underestimated that about him at all, and and I think the murder itself was a shock. It had always been it was an extraordinary time in American history. Robert Kennedy, there was an assassination attempt on President Reagan, but never before had a musician been shot like this, assassinated, and never since.
I mean, and just looking at the images from the documentary on the screen, you can just see the impact, the flood of people gathering around when this news broke. I always feel like when I watch a documentary of some sort or anything, the person who is telling the story, the narrator, really makes an impact. And you had Emmy winner Kiefer Sutherland as that narrator. Why did you feel like he was the right person for this?
Well, I think, he's obviously, some voices just work, basically. He is a musician himself. He's a huge Beatles fan. He's a New Yorker. I think he just felt a real affiliation to the story. I think he felt it was important to tell this story at this time, to remind people of what John stood for. To also, we've now got the chance to fully explore this case. There's tapes of Chapman that have never been heard before. We hear from Chapman's defense team. We get an understanding of what America, New York in particular, was like, in the early 80s. And I think it's a story that he felt was important and important to be reminded of. So we were delighted he agreed to do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was incredible to talk to you. I am actually very excited to watch this docuseries. I think it's very interesting. I'm a huge fan of the Beatles, so I feel like this is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time, and you are giving it this platform to do it. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And remember, the docuseries will be available December 6th on Apple TV+.